Effective immediately, Amara Johnson is suspended pending board review. Vice Principal Sinclair's voice cracked through the cafeteria, heels snapping like gavel strikes across polished tile. Phones froze mid-scroll. Whispers died. EJ's crutch tapped once against the floor. Amara didn't flinch. Still at her table, calm eyes, a fighter's quiet dignity under a verdict meant to break her. But her silence wasn't surrender. It was a stance. Behind that stillness lived a code no one at Crestwood truly understood. Her order wasn't discipline. It was detonation. The spark that would turn one viral clip into a trial of the whole school. Because this isn't only about Amara, it's every place where reputation crushes truth. And every day, a girl with nothing threatens the system built to silence her. What happens next will turn shaky phone footage into fire and force a billionaire father to finally choose between order and justice. This is Black Stories, where the pain of prejudice is told and justice always finds its voice. If you believe schools should protect courage, not crush it, like this video, subscribe and stay with us. Sometimes the smallest stand in the room topples the tallest lie. And as you'll soon see, poetic justice begins with two quiet words. Stand tall. If this moment feels like an explosion, go back to where the fuse was lit. Part 1 is linked in the comments. That's where Amara first stood tall and where this fight truly began. Amara Johnson sat in silence as Sinclair's words echoed. Suspended. Her heart thudded, but her face stayed calm, just as her father had taught her. Never give them your fear. But fear was there. Not of Jason or Connor, not of fists or chance. Fear of what she would tell her mother when she walked home with papers instead of a future. Because Amara knew what Crestwood meant. This scholarship wasn't just a ticket into marble floors and glossy textbooks. It was her shot to rewrite everything her family had carried. Her father, Master Anthony Johnson, had once stood tall in a cracked dojo with faded mats. He gave his life teaching discipline to kids who had nothing. She was one of them. But when the heart attack came, Amara was left with only memory and code. Never throw the first punch. Never fight for ego. Protect the weak. She whispered those words in empty bedrooms, bowed alone in the dojo where dust replaced students, practiced katas with no teacher but his voice in her head. And when Crestwood handed her a scholarship, she carried that code into halls lined with privilege. But privilege doesn't like being reminded it isn't invincible. Sinclair saw it from the beginning. To her, Amara wasn't a prodigy. She was a threat to the order she had spent decades maintaining. An order where scholarships filled brochures but never shook the hierarchy. 30 years ago, Sinclair had been a scholarship kid too, but she chose survival over pride. She kept her head down, became the perfect shadow of the wealthy kids around her. She graduated, climbed the ladder, and built her career protecting Crestwood's reputation. To her, Amara was the ghost of everything she had buried. Except this girl didn't bow to the system. She stood. She moved. She protected. And in one viral clip, she did what Sinclair had never dared. She exposed Crestwood's hypocrisy to the world. The parents' board was livid. Donors were calling. Headlines ran not about Crestwood's excellence, but about its bullies, its silence, its privilege exposed. Sinclair's inbox filled with questions she couldn't answer. So she chose the scapegoat, Amara. It didn't matter that Amara never threw the first punch. It didn't matter that she saved EJ from humiliation that day. To Sinclair, it mattered that the school's power structure had been cracked and she wasn't about to let a charity girl be the one holding the hammer. EJ saw it too. He clenched his crutch until his knuckles whitened. All his life, he'd been the one under fire. But now someone had stood for him. And the thought of losing her made his chest ash in a way even his limp never did. Amara wasn't just his defender. She was proof his mother's words were still alive. The stars don't care how fast you walk. They shine for you anyway. And if Crestwood tore her down, then maybe the stars lied. The school had never felt so tense. The marble floors still gleamed. The chandeliers still sparkled. The Tesla doors still hissed open every morning. But the air was different, heavy, uneasy. Because no matter how many times Principal Harrington tried to spin the narrative, the world had seen the cafeteria video. And Crestwood's perfect reputation had cracks you could drive a limousine through. The students knew it. The parents whispered it, and Amara felt it with every step. At first, some students smiled at her in the halls. A few even whispered, "Thank you," but others they doubled down. Jason and Connor may have been pulled from the school, but their friends stayed. And cruelty doesn't need a leader. It just needs an excuse. "Careful, Sensei." Someone sneered as she walked past. Don't flip me into the lockers. Phones tilted up, waiting for a reaction. Amara kept walking, head steady, hands calm, but inside her stomach tightened. She knew this wasn't about Jason anymore. This was about power, and power wore a navy blue suit and heels that struck like gavel cracks. Vice Principal Sinclair. Sinclair had always walked Crestwood like a queen disguised as a servant. She knew which families funded the theater wing, which alumni paid for the new science lab, which billionaire's child couldn't be allowed to fail a test. Her job wasn't to discipline, it was to protect the brand, and Amara, she had become a liability. Staff meetings buzzed with tension. Teachers whispered about the board's pressure. Sinclair's voice always cut sharpest. If we let one viral clip dictate our policies, Crestwood will be a circus. She never said Amara's name. She didn't have to. Everyone knew it escalated quickly. Amara's scholarship suddenly under review. A hall pass. She didn't have a homework assignment missing, even though she knew she turned it in. Each incident was small, deniable, but together they painted her as trouble. And all the while Sinclair's gaze followed her, cold, calculated. Emily, Richard Whitmore's daughter, noticed it too. She rolled beside Amara one afternoon in the courtyard, her voice sharp for a 13-year-old. She's trying to break you, Amara offered a small smile. Then she doesn't know me very well. But inside the words stung because Amara knew exactly what Sinclair was doing. It was the same tactic her father had warned her about years ago in the dojo. The world won't always hit you with fists, Amara. Sometimes it will try to cut you down piece by piece. That's when you hold your stance the longest. Meanwhile, EJ watched all of this from the sidelines, fury boiling under his skin. For the first time in his life, he wanted to fight, not with fists, but with words. But he was Richard Whitmore's son, and his father's silence was louder than anything he could say. Until one day, EJ overheard Sinclair's real plan. She was meeting with Harrington and a few wealthy parents in the office. EJ had come back late for his forgotten crutch, standing outside the door, unheard. Expulsion is the cleanest option, Sinclair's voice cut through. The Johnson girl is disruptive. The longer she's here, the more the narrative spins out of our control. The mother's voice agreed. Our children can't learn in chaos, and she's not our image. Not our image. The words felt like knives. EJ staggered back down the hall, his chest heavy. For the first time, he understood. This wasn't about a fight. This was about erasing Amara, and if he didn't speak up, she'd be gone. By afternoon, a single-line email hit every inbox. Mandatory assembly, all students and faculty, Friday morning. No subject, no explanation, just a summons. And at Crestwood Academy, summons meant spectacle. By the time Amara walked into the gymnasium, the bleachers were packed, phones already out, students buzzing, teachers fidgeting, the school's PR team lurking near the back with clipboards. Something big was coming. On stage, a massive banner stretched across the wall. Crestwood values excellence, discipline, integrity. Vice Principal Sinclair stood beneath it, her suit sharp, her expression carved from stone. She gripped the microphone like a judge about to deliver a sentence. Students, she began, her voice carrying across the gym. Today we address the disruption that has tarnished Crestwood's reputation. Discipline will be restored. Murmurs rippled, eyes flicked toward Amara, phones angled her way. EJ shifted nervously beside her on the bleachers, his crutch tapping against the floor like a warning drum. She's coming for you, he whispered. Amara's jaw tightened. She already knew. Sinclair continued. Recently, a cafeteria incident was sensationalized online. Clips were edited, context removed, she says. I saw Amara. Crestwood cannot be held hostage by theatrics masquerading as courage. Gasps, whispers, edited. The video everyone saw had been raw, uncut, the truth. But Sinclair wasn't here for truth. She was here for narrative. She raised a hand toward the projector. Today, we will review the evidence in full. The lights dimmed, the screen lit up, and the cafeteria scene began to play. At first, it looked the same. Jason's shove, EJ stumbling, Amara stepping forward. But suddenly, the footage jumped. A cut so clumsy it almost blurred. Then Amara's hand gripping Jason's arm. No context, no shove before it. Just her movement looped again and again. The gym gasped. Sinclair's. The gym gasped. Sinclair's. Voice sliced through the dark. Violence instigated by a scholarship student. EJ shot to his feet. That's not what happened. But Sinclair raised her palm. Sit down, Elijah. The crowd buzzed. Some whispered support for Amara. Others whispered suspicion. Phones were recording. Yes, but Sinclair was controlling the stage. And power isn't always about truth. It's about volume. Integrity, Sinclair said, gesturing to the banner behind her. That is what we demand. Crestwood cannot be defined by outbursts and theatrics. This is a school of excellence, not a circus. Every word landed like a blow. Amara sat still, her hands folded. Her face calm, but inside her father's voice echoed. They will try to break you piece by piece. Sinclair pressed harder. Effective immediately, Amara Johnson's scholarship is expelled. Gasps tore through the gym. EJ slammed his crutch to the ground. You can't. But Sinclair's eyes were cold steel. Silence, Mr. Whitmore. Or would you like your father to explain why his son disrupts order at every turn? The crowd murmured louder. Phones zoomed in. This wasn't just an assembly anymore. It was a trial. And Sinclair was judge, jury, and executioner. Amara rose slowly from her seat. Every eye followed her. She didn't shout. She didn't beg. She simply walked to the center aisle, her steps echoing in the gym's silence. Her voice was calm, steady. I didn't fight for ego. I didn't swing first. I stood when someone needed me. If Crestwood caused that chaos, then maybe order is the problem. The gym erupted. Cheers, claps, even stomps. Phones shook in hands, capturing every second. Sinclair's face flushed red. But just as the moment threatened to tip toward Amara, Sinclair struck again. Security, she snapped. Escort her out. 2 guards stepped forward. The crowd booed. EJ struggled to his feet, shouting, She saved me. She saved the school's honor. Chaos consumed the gym. Shouts, applause, jeers, whistles. Half the students rose to defend Amara. The other half sat frozen, too afraid to move. And as the guards approached, Amara turned not toward Sinclair, but toward EJ. Her words cut through the roar like a blade. Stand tall, he gripped his crutch. And for the second time in his life, he did. Phones captured everything. Sinclair's order, the guards, EJ's defiance, the standing ovation that rose like thunder. Sinclair had meant to bury Amara. Instead, she had turned her into a symbol. And symbols don't fade, they spread. The guards closed in, heavy shoes pounding against the polished gym floor. The crowd buzzed like a hive on fire. Amara didn't move. Her chin lifted, her eyes locked forward. She had been here before. Not in this gym, not in this body, but in every moment she'd been underestimated, dismissed, silenced. Never throw the first punch. Never fight for ego. Protect the weak. Her father's code beat in her chest like a second heart. But this time it wasn't just her own dignity on trial. Don't touch her. EJ's voice cracked through the chaos like a whip. The boy no one listened to, mocked for his limp, ignored by his peers. Now his voice carried the weight of the entire gym. The guards hesitated. Sinclair's eyes widened, then narrowed. Sit down, Elijah. But EJ didn't sit. He leaned on his crutch, shaking, but unbroken, and stepped into the aisle beside Amara. The crowd gasped. You say she caused chaos? He shouted, his voice trembling but growing stronger with every word. The only chaos is this school treating truth like it's a threat. The gym roared. Phones shot higher. Students screamed in agreement. Some stood clapping, others stomped their feet. Sinclair's jaw tightened. The pearl earrings at her ears glinted under the fluorescent lights as her mind raced, because in Amara she saw another cafeteria 10 years ago. 2 scholarship boys of color cornered by wealthy kids. She'd suspended the boys on the spot. Donors applauded. A gleaming science wing went up with their names in stone. Then the headlines hit, discipline or discrimination, and the board quietly moved her on. Since then, she's policed optics, not justice. And beneath it all, something more personal burned. Lillian, her daughter, 13 years old, when she stood in a room full of parents and dared to say the one thing Sinclair couldn't forgive. You protect money more than people. The words had cut deeper than any headline. That night, Lillian packed her bag and left to live with Sinclair's ex-husband. They barely spoke now. So, when Amara lifted her chin and refused to break, Sinclair didn't just see a student. She saw Lillian. She saw defiance. She saw the embodiment of everything she had failed to control. Her voice sharpened, dripping venom. You're out of line, both of you. But EJ's voice thundered back louder this time. The limp, the crutch, the years of shrinking back, all of it burned away in that single word. No, you've been out of line. You've punished the wrong people. And you think money or your title or this banner? He jabbed his finger toward the giant letters above the gym. Excellence, discipline, integrity can hide the truth, but the truth is standing right here. I heard you with my own ears. You said I disrupt order. You told donors Amara isn't our image. Say it here into the mic. The gym shook. Students whistled, shouted. A chant sparked in the back and rippled forward like fire catching dry grass. Justice, justice, justice. Amara brushed EJ's shoulder, grounding him. Her whisper cut through the roar. Stand tall, he did. Look at her. EJ shouted, pointing straight at Amara. She didn't hit anyone. She didn't start anything. She saved me. She saved all of us from becoming a school that cheers cruelty instead of courage. The chant grew louder. The gym floor trembled beneath stamping feet. Phones zoomed in. Teachers exchanged nervous glances. And then another sound broke the air. The creak of expensive leather shoes against the gym floor. The soft cough of a man unused to being ignored. Richard Whitmore, the billionaire CEO, had slipped in quietly, flanked by aides who looked like statues. But now every head turned, every phone swiveled. He stood in the doorway, silver hair gleaming under the lights, suit pressed sharper than Sinclair's words. His expression was unreadable. Not arrogance, not pride, but something heavier. The crowd parted as he walked forward. Even Sinclair stepped back, rattled by his presence. Richard stopped at the edge of the aisle, his gaze locking first on his son. EJ froze, courage flickering for a heartbeat. His father had never seen him like this. But then Richard turned his eyes to Amara. Silence. The chants died mid-breath. The gym held itself still. And for the first time in years, Richard Whitmore didn't look like a man commanding a boardroom. He looked like a father reckoning with everything he had ignored. But he didn't speak, not yet. He just stood in the doorway watching his son and the girl who carried his dignity. The silence grew unbearable. And then he spoke. What's happening here? His voice was low but steady, carried by the faint buzz of the mic Sinclair had slammed a moment earlier. EJ swallowed. His voice cracked, but he didn't falter. She's the reason I can stand here right now. The gym erupted. Phones soared higher. Students screamed. Teachers covered their mouths. Sinclair's plan, the edited video, the suspension threat, they are on grip, unraveled in seconds, exposed not just as bias, but as obsession. And as the roar filled the gym, Amara didn't bask in the attention. She didn't bow. She didn't smirk. She simply turned to EJ and whispered again, steady as stone, stand tall. And this time, it wasn't just EJ. It was the entire room. The gym was no longer a school assembly. It was a courtroom. On one side stood Vice Principal Sinclair, her face pinched, her clipboard trembling in her hands. On the other, Amara Johnson, calm as stone, with EJ Whitmore standing at her side. And cutting through the center, billionaire Richard Whitmore, his presence so heavy it bent the air. The room held its breath. Phones recorded every second. No one dared blink. Sinclair gripped the mic like a lifeline. This girl disrupted the assembly. She attacked students. She endangered order at Crestwood Academy. Discipline must be upheld. Boos rippled from the bleachers. A boy shouted, "Play the real clip again." Another chimed in. She didn't attack anyone. The chants from earlier started to swell again. Justice, justice, justice. Richard raised a single hand. The room fell quiet instantly. Money didn't just buy silence here. His reputation commanded it, but his voice was softer than anyone expected. "Miss Sinclair," he said, each word deliberate. "I just watched a video, not the one you played, the real one. And in it, I didn't see violence. I saw courage." Gasps rippled. Sinclair's face blanched. "With all due respect, Mr. Whitmore," she stammered. "Your son's involvement clouds your judgment." This girl. Her finger jabbed the air toward Amara like a spear. Richard's eyes narrowed. "That girl," he interrupted, his tone slicing sharper than any gavel, "kept my son from being humiliated. She caught him when your star students shoved him. She stood where no adult did, while you," his gaze burned into her, "chose to punish her instead of protecting them both." Then, quieter, almost lost under the gym lights, he leaned toward Amara. "I'm sorry I wasn't there last time." "Thank you for being there when I wasn't." The gym exploded. Cheers. Screams, clapping so loud it rattled the championship banners overhead. Sinclair tried to push back, her voice cracked. The rules. Richard thundered, his patience gone. He stepped closer, his polished shoes echoing on the floor. "What rules punish the protector and protect the cruel? What rules silence the truth in favor of appearances?" The crowd surged. Some students stood on. The crowd surged. Some students stood on. The bleachers, fists pumping. Teachers exchanged uneasy looks. The authority Sinclair had leaned on for years was crumbling under her feet. Amara finally spoke. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. This isn't about rules. This is about bias, about who gets believed and who doesn't. The silence was deafening. Her words cut straight through the noise. Jason and Connor mocked EJ because of his limp. She continued. They mocked me because of my clothes. You didn't see them, Mrs. Sinclair. You saw us, the scholarship kid, the disabled boy. And in your eyes, we were the problem. Gasps swept the room. A teacher near the back dropped her pen. A parent covered her mouth. Sinclair's voice shook. That's outrageous. I would never. But you did, Richard snapped. His hand slammed against the podium. The mic squealed. Protecting bullies isn't discipline. It's branding. That ends today. And in that instant, 3 words detonated the internet. That ends today. The gym erupted again. Phones shook as kids shouted, yes, and justice. Some stomped the floor in rhythm, turning the room into a thunderous drum. Sinclair's mask cracked. Her voice rose to a shriek. You can't override my authority. I just did. Richard's voice was ice. The crowd froze, then screamed. The Billionaire CEO had just stripped his own vice principal bare in front of the entire school. EJ, trembling but steady, lifted his crutch and planted it firmly on the floor. We don't need someone who protects bullies more than students. The chant spread like wildfire. Stand tall, stand tall, stand tall. Sinclair's clipboard slipped from her hands, clattering to the ground. Papers scattered like broken shields. For the first time, she looked small. And in the middle of the chaos, Amara didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She simply bowed her head slightly, her father's code alive in her bones. Discipline wasn't about crushing opponents. It was about revealing the truth. And in that gym, the truth had finally been spoken. Louder than wealth, louder than fear, louder than any lie Sinclair could ever tell again. By nightfall, Crestwood Academy wasn't just a school anymore. It was trending. The clip of the gym confrontation spread like wildfire. Not Jason's shove this time. That was yesterday's story. No, today's viral sensation was the moment Vice Principal Sinclair jabbed her finger at Amara Johnson, accusing her of violence, and billionaire Richard Whitmore cut her down with 7 words. That ends today. The caption under the first TikTok upload was brutal when the richest man in the room defends the poorest girl. Within an hour, it hit 500,000 views. By morning, 10 million. Every replay showed Sinclair's mask cracking, papers scattering across the floor, and Amara's calm voice saying, "This isn't about rules. This is about bias." On Twitter, Round surged, #stand tall, #discipline over privilege. Crestwood cover-up. One post showed side-by-side screenshots. Jason smirking as he shoved EJ and Sinclair pointing at Amara like a criminal. The caption spot the real threat. Hint, it's not her. The backlash was instant. Alumni wrote open letters. This is why scholarship kids quit. We see it. We lived it. Parents blasted the board. How can we trust a school that protects bullies over students? By the second day, local reporters camped outside Crestwood's gates. Students streamed past them with phones high, chanting, "Stand tall! Stand tall!" like a battle cry. But the real bombshell came when a former Crestwood teacher broke silence. She tweeted, "Sinclair suspended me in 2019 for trying to report bullying. She told me, don't stir the pot. Parents pay for peace, not problems." The internet erupted. Screenshots surfaced. Emails leaked. It wasn't just Amara. Sinclair had buried complaints for years protecting kids with last names carved on gym walls. Every revelation was gasoline, every post another spark. And in the middle of it all, Amara's name kept trending, but not as a victim, as a hero. Clips looped endlessly. Her steady hand returning EJ's crutch. Her whisper, "Stand tall," now quoted in captions, turned into TikTok edits, even printed on posters kids held at protests outside Crestwood. News anchors framed it bluntly. Scholarship girl exposes systemic bias at elite school. Billionaire sides with student against prejudice. And while Sinclair hid behind her office door, parents stormed board meetings demanding her removal. The board tried to delay, but every excuse was shredded by cameras and headlines. Then the final hit. A local journalist dug up Sinclair's past. Her brother, expelled years ago for violence, had claimed his victim provoked him. Sinclair had defended him publicly, saying, "He's not a bad kid. He just made a mistake." It was all there. The bias wasn't random. It was personal. She'd carried that chip for years, punishing kids like Amara to rewrite her brother's shame. Their revelation detonated. Comment sections flooded. So, this is why she went after Amara. She's been carrying a vendetta on kids for decades. She's unfit. Period. Within 48 hours, Sinclair's resignation was announced. Not voluntary, forced. The statement was flat, effective immediately. Jason and Connor's withdrawals were finalized the same week. Their parents issued written apologies to the student body. Phones buzzed across the city. Kids high-fived in the halls. Staff whispered relief, and in a quiet corner of Crestwood, EJ looked at Amara with awe. They silenced her for years, he whispered. But you broke it open. Amara didn't smile. She just straightened, calm as ever, her father's code alive in her bones. Because for her, it was never about viral fame. It was about truth finally standing taller than prejudice. The cafeteria was quiet again, but not because of fear, because of change. A week after Sinclair's resignation, Crestwood Academy gathered its students in the same gym where she once ruled with clipped heels and clipped compassion. Only this time, there were no threats, no suspensions, no silencing. At the front stood Principal Harrington, sweating under the lights, his voice wobbling. Today we acknowledge the events that brought our school into the spotlight. Crestwood failed to protect all its students. That ends now. The words landed like a verdict. Phones recorded, kids whispered, and in the front row, Amara Johnson sat quietly, her backpack at her feet, hands folded. She didn't look triumphant. She looked steady. Then the doors opened. Gasps rippled. Richard Whitmore, Billionaire board member, untouchable, walked in. Not with lawyers, not with cameras, just with his son. EJ's crutch tapped softly against the floor, each step stronger than the last. The gym stilled. Phones rose higher. Richard cleared his throat, his voice carrying through the silence. I came here today not as a CEO, not as a board member, as a father who failed to see his son, and a father who owes a debt to a young woman braver than most adults I know. Every head turned toward Amara. Her eyes widened, but she didn't move. Richard walked closer, every word deliberate. Amara Johnson, when I was blind, you saw. When I was silent, you spoke. When my son was about to break, you helped him stand tall. The gym erupted. Applause thundered. But Richard wasn't finished. He faced the crowd. Crestwood has thrived on privilege too long. That stops today. Effective immediately, the Whitmore Foundation will fund full scholarships for students who, like Amara, carry more dignity in their stride than wealth in their pocket. The roar was deafening. Kids stomped. Staff cheered. Some even cried. But Richard turned back to Amara, lowering his voice so only the front rows caught it. And for you, Amara, this school will not just erase its debt. It will honor it. You once trained in a dojo your father built for the community. We will rebuild it in his name. Every child who walks through its doors will know the discipline he taught and the courage you embody. Amara chose the architect, hired local contractors, and set a free tuition policy first. Richard funded everything. Amara's breath caught. For the first time, her calm cracked. Her lips trembled. Her eyes glossed. She bowed her head, whispering, "Thank you." The gym floor shook with cheers. But the story wasn't just applause, because across the room, EJ stood taller than ever. He raised his crutch like a staff, his voice ringing. This isn't about money. This is about courage. Amara showed me what my mom always said. Best stars shine anyway. And today we shine together. The chant began low, then thundered through the rafters. Stand tall, stand tall, stand tall. Phones caught every second. Clips hit the internet before the assembly ended. Edits of Amara bowing, of Richard's speech, of EJ's trembling but steady words. By nightfall, hashtags trended again. # stand tall. Amara Johnson Dojo. # courage over cruelty. And the next week, cameras lined a cracked sidewalk in Detroit. The old dojo, once abandoned, stood alive again. Sidewalk in Detroit. The old dojo, once abandoned, stood alive again. Fresh paint, polished floors. A sign above the door. Master Anthony Johnson Community Dojo. Built by discipline, rebuilt by community. Amara stood at the entrance, EJ at her side. Kids poured in. Kids in clearance rack sneakers, in thrift store jeans. Kids who'd been mocked, overlooked, underestimated. Each one bowing at the door. Reporters shoved microphones at Amara. What does this mean to you? She smiled softly. It means no one fights alone. It means dignity can't be silenced. And it means when the weak are protected, the strong are truly seen. The applause wasn't just in Detroit. It was online. Global parents posted, showed this to my daughter. She cried. Survivors of bullying wrote, I wish I had an Amara when I was in school. And in a quiet moment, after the crowd thinned, Richard approached Amara once more. No cameras, no board, just a father. My wife always said, courage is contagious, he said softly. Thank you for giving that to my son and to me. Amara looked at him calm but firm. Then don't waste it. Stand tall with him. Richard nodded. For once he didn't have a deal to sign or a meeting to rush to. He just had a promise to keep because they mocked a limp. They sneered at thrift store shoes. They thought silence was weakness. But silence turned into discipline. Discipline turned into courage. And courage turned into justice. And now justice was rebuilding. But the first parent who walked into the new dojo wasn't there to say thanks. She was there to say, "You made an enemy you don't understand." Because Crestwood's darkest scandal wasn't bullying at all. It was the money that bought the silence. This is Black Stories, where the underestimated rise, the arrogant fall, and dignity always finds its way home. If this story moved you, hit like so more people hear it. Subscribe, because every week we share stories where the smallest voices topple the loudest lies. And remember, courage doesn't need to roar. Sometimes it only needs to stand tall,